Tonight, nationwide protests in Israel demanding an end to the war in Gaza and the release of the hostages.
We the people demand we prioritize the hostages.
The emotional pleas from families still waiting. Plus, showdown with the Fed. President Trump moves to fire a Federal Reserve governor. The accusations, the pushback, and what it means for your money. And thousands came for sneakers, but walked right into a move of God. See how God used Air Jordans to spark revival in the Windy City.
He loves his people so much here in Chicago. He's like, I'm going to send an army to go get you.
Plus, no family, no home. The Trump administration's new push to help kids aging out of foster care. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A day of heartbreak and outrage in Israel, with thousands calling for the return of the October 7th hostages. Good evening. I'm John Jessup.
And in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Protesters packed the streets, blocked traffic, and demanded Israeli leaders reach a deal with Hamas to end the war in Gaza and free the 50 Israeli hostages still in captivity.
One demonstrator passionately urged world leaders to help end this conflict.
The majority of the Israeli people want the end of the suffering of the hostages and the people in Gaza. We're calling also upon the leader of the world, the leaders of the free world, and President Trump to help us end this terrible tragedy, to end the war, ceasefire now, and the return of all the 50 hostages back home.
So far, efforts to reach a ceasefire have failed, and Israel is gearing up for a broader offensive to destroy Hamas, even as international outrage grows over an IDF hospital strike that killed several journalists and rescue workers. Israel says the target of the strike was a surveillance camera it believed was operated by Hamas. Israel also says it identified terrorists at the hospital. The Foreign Press Association counters the area was known as a common work zone for journalists and that no warning was given before the strike.
Well, here in Washington, President Trump is making historic moves at the Federal Reserve, firing one of its 7 governors with a termination letter posted to his Truth Social account. Trump says he is removing Lisa Cook from her position due to evidence of mortgage fraud. She's firing back, though, vowing to sue, and says she has no plans to resign. A final decision on the matter will likely have to be made by the Supreme Court. If her firing is upheld, Trump will be on track to have appointed a majority of the governors on the Federal Reserve Board.
Well, joining us now is Ted Rossman. He is the senior industry analyst at Bankrate. Ted, welcome back to Faith Nation. So this is the first time in history a president is taking this step. I wonder, how do observers view her firing? Is it an end run to change the composition of the Fed so that they'll lower interest rates as the president has been demanding?
Well, like a lot of things these days, it's highly politicized. So how you feel about it probably depends largely on your political leanings. The more neutral economists, though, would point out that Fed independence is very important. And countries that have independent central banks tend to be more prosperous than those that do not. You know, some of this is wrapped up in all the talk these past several months about, is Fed Chair Jerome Powell going to be removed from office? You know, seemingly not. But, you know, just like we heard some saber rattling about, oh, the Fed's spending too much on this building renovation, now there's this dirt that's been dug up on Cook's mortgage applications. It does seem that there are efforts by some, you know, around the president to, you know, really change the composition of the Fed board here. Powell's term ends middle of next year, so that's going to be a major reshaping, but you know, potentially even some changes on the board before then. Another governor recently retired. So, you know, all of a sudden these vacancies could be stacking up.
Yeah, I think Cook's term doesn't end until 2038. So stocks initially fell when President Trump announced that he was removing her. Why did the news spook investors?
A lot of it does have to come back to that Fed independence. I mean, clearly the president wants lower rates to make it easier for the government to borrow and, you know, potentially make it easier and cheaper for consumers to get mortgages and other loans. Stock investors generally love low rates. Real estate developers, which the president was in a previous career, they love low rates. So it's just how we get there is really the question. certainly if rates come down for good reasons, which are, lower inflation, well, that's a good thing. If rates come down because of job weakness, that's not as much of a good thing. If they come down because of political pressure, that could be viewed as a bad thing, just because that could be undermining the Fed's independence. This has traditionally been a very independent organization, and that's something that Powell takes very seriously. It's actually one of the reasons why he almost always wears a purple tie, kind of the blend of red and blue. This is one government agency that's really nonpartisan and really prides itself on, as they say, the dual mandate: maximum employment, stable prices. They really try to stay out of the political fray, but they've been dragged into it this year.
Ted, August numbers from the government show a slight dip in consumer confidence and evidence of a weakening labor market, meaning that it's harder for people who are out of jobs to find jobs. What's going on here?
It's so interesting because stocks have been hitting record highs this month, and that's very much at odds with consumer confidence, which remains depressed. Now, a lot of that has to do with the cumulative effects of inflation and the worries that tariffs could make it worse. To be fair, tariffs haven't really impacted prices very much at all so far. There is still the worry that maybe that won't last forever and prices could go up in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty. There has been some weakening in the job market. Hiring has slowed. Some say that has to do with some of the uncertainty created by tariffs and interest rate policy. And, there is a lot of uncertainty. A lot of businesses are kind of on hold. There's not a lot of firing going on right now, but there's not a lot of hiring either. The job market is kind of largely frozen. There's not a lot of movement in or out, and a lot of it does track back to uncertainty.
Okay. Ted Rossman with Bankrate. Ted, great to have you on this evening. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, the redistricting wars in Texas and California have a handful of other states now joining efforts to redraw maps before the midterms.
Democratic lawmakers right here in Washington have threatened to respond with a plan to mobilize gerrymandering, if I can say that, in more blue states if Republicans keep pressing ahead. Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has been tracking the developments.
While House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is hinting to move forward with a plan of his own to redraw maps in blue states, a new redistricting twist is developing out of Utah, where a judge there is ordering the legislature to redraw the lines in the state before the 2026 midterms. It stems from a long-standing court battle. Back in 2018, Utah voters passed a ballot measure allowing the legislature to draw new boundary lines, but under certain guardrails. One of those banned partisan gerrymandering. That ballot measure also created an independent commission to recommend congressional maps going forward. But 2 years later, that redistricting ban was softened, and the requirement for legislators to vote on the independent commission's map was removed. In her ruling, the judge said the legislature intentionally stripped away the heart of the 2018 reform passed by voters. But for now, it's unclear whether this court battle will be resolved or if Utah will have new maps for midterms.
The court today reaffirmed that citizens have both the right and the responsibility to reform unjust systems. We thank the court for upholding that principle and recognizing that voter-driven reform is not only supported by the Utah State Constitution, it is essential to a functioning democracy.
And over the weekend, Texas Republicans approved an aggressive redraw, potentially gaining 5 additional states for the GOP in next year's midterms. In response, California Governor Gavin Newsom is leading a charge with Democrats to unlock 5 new seats in the Golden State, which could lead to a fall special election to get the green light from voters. During President Trump's first term, Democrats flipped 41 seats, which would be more than enough to win the majority and make Jeffries Speaker, even if Republicans force through several new seats.
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London. Thanks, Michelle. Well, Jesus and Air Jordans. We head to Chicago to see how one group is bringing the two together for God's glory. Right after this.
Welcome back. In the Bible, Jesus said, when you offer a drink to the thirsty, feed the hungry, and clothe the needy, it's as if you've done it for Christ himself.
Well, recently I saw a ministry demonstrate that in a powerful way in a city that's often associated with danger.
When it comes to the Windy City, Navy Pier, Willis Tower, the Magnificent Mile, and maybe even Wrigley Field make the list of Chicago's top tourist destinations. One place not included? The city's south side. An area known for crime and neighborhoods that have seen brighter days. Although don't try to tell that to Kyle Martin.
There's a label of Englewood. There's a label at the back of the yard. It's like, oh, it's tough, it's rough, man. Nobody wants you to come. We've seen the opposite.
Right there, verse 9.
Kyle's passion for evangelism has taken him across the country and overseas. His latest stop? This Southside city block where his ministry, Time to Revive, set up shop to share the gospel through a shoe giveaway. And not just any pair, but a brand that's synonymous with a Chicago legend, Nike Air Jordans.
We wait in line 3 or 4 hours, in front of Foot Locker, Champs, every Jordan release. So to do it for Jesus, to do it for God is a beautiful thing, man, to see this line.
The goal? Yes, we do have 3-9. To give away 5,000 pair of donated Air Jordans in 5 days. With long lines, tents, and porta potties, the setup might conjure up a chaotic shoe carnival. Yet with security,
single file line, please,
logistics, and hundreds of volunteers, this operation glides along smoothly.
So it feels like a process, like all the tents and all the stations, but the heart behind it is just that people will be welcomed into a place. And we just have a spirit of hospitality.
That's what most said they experienced. Even Chicago resident Michelle Craig, who weathered the rain and hot summer sun for 3 long hours.
When I made it inside, it was worth it, because I was gonna leave.
Her tough exterior melted away when greeted with cheers and embraced with prayer.
We built to be tough, everything is tough. And she was so anointed because it was so pure and it was heartfelt. I couldn't even stop crying.
During that warm welcome, runners already are working behind the scenes to find the right size. And while waiting, volunteers, young and old alike, share the gospel.
Do you feel like you got more than just a pair of shoes?
Yeah, I absolutely did.
It's not just the residents who live here in Chicago who are walking away with something they need. For the volunteers, though intangible, they're gaining something worth way more than an expensive pair of shoes.
Norma Berlin decided to volunteer after watching a documentary about Kyle's ministry called The One Who Hears, A Call to Obedience.
Evangelism, 100%, he's calling all of us to do this.
And I'm like, oh boy, what's God gonna have me do? So I was like, oh no, okay, Lord, I'm gonna watch it and see what it is.
We're just going around asking people if we could pray, if we could do one prayer for you.
Weeks later, she was in Chicago, learning how to boldly share her faith while becoming inspired by the depths of God's grace toward others.
God loved Nineveh so much, and he sent Jonah. He loves his people so much here in Chicago. He's like, I'm going to send an army to go get you.
An army of more than 500 volunteers teaming up with local pastors and ministries. More than kicks, Kyle says the real goal is to move churchgoers from out of the pews to the streets and getting more comfortable about sharing God's rescue plan for the world.
And it really is fulfilling the Great Commission. These volunteers are coming because they want an opportunity to go share the gospel where they can actually see people's lives changing.
For by grace you have been saved through faith.
They did it through street ministry, round-the-clock intercessory prayer, Bible giveaways, and baptisms in this mobile truck.
You baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
105 in all.
I have never done anything like this ever before in my life.
We saw volunteers barely able to contain their excitement as they moved out of their comfort zones to share their faith. That's true even for longtime and visible Christians like Andre Turan, a volunteer who also happens to be team chaplain for the Chicago Bulls.
I think this event has told me, put the flesh aside and just get over yourself. And that has allowed people to truly, I think, encounter the living Christ.
Souls for Jesus also provided food for the volunteers and the people they came to serve. Texans on Mission, which usually responds to disasters, prepared nearly 10,000 meals.
why would we be doing something like this that's not a disaster? Well, there's no greater disaster than people that don't know the Lord.
Chicago pastor Otis Davis, who worked with Kyle's ministry in other cities, pushed for an event in his neighborhood for 10 years.
I saw there, if God could change a small community and make a difference, he definitely could change Chicago. And if he changed Chicago, we could change the world.
That sentiment about needed change echoed by his son's generation.
You get warnings, don't come to this area because how dangerous it is. But this is exactly where salvation needs to be. This is exactly where God needs to be to make the transformation.
Kyle says seeing that transformation up close is what's motivated him to commit his life to the Savior's words in Matthew chapter 28, to go make disciples, baptize, and teach.
You know, the statistics show that many, many people in America are not sharing the gospel. And that really is our goal, to equip people to think, I can do this in a gas station, I can do this at the grocery store, or I can do this in my own neighborhood.
John, that is such a great story. I love the ministry. I love what they're doing. What was it like being on the ground there?
You know, Jenna, I think the word that comes to my mind, besides it being incredibly moving, was that it was transformational. You witnessed people who came there understandably skeptical. They're like, okay, we're standing in the hot sun. You're giving me a free pair of shoes. What's in it for you? And as you watched them walk through the process, you actually saw them softening both their faces and figuratively their hearts to the point where they ultimately became receptive to receiving prayer and hearing the gospel. So it was incredible to see, and I think that's a powerful demonstration of how people respond to God's love when it's authentically displayed through his people. I also want to say that Time to Revive is so effective with their goal, getting believers to step out of their comfort zones to do what we're called to do. They even got our CBN News team in on the action. On the last day, I was watching a baptism, and as I was standing there, they said, hey, do you want to baptize this young man who made a decision to follow Jesus? I tried to resist.
There you are.
I tried. I said, hey, you know what? I'm not an ordained minister. Leave that for the ordained ministers. And they reminded me that the Great Commission, nowhere in the Great Commission does it say that it's reserved for pastors. So myself and CBN videographer Isaiah Pewter, we baptized 3 people, and we were able to pray over them as they started their spiritual journeys.
What a blessing.
Oh, man. We went to report, and little did I know that we'd be there baptizing people.
Yeah, really rolling up your sleeves.
Yeah.
So, you know, Chicago, beautiful city. You know, crime is a problem there, though. How did you experience that? What was that like?
You know, the numbers are undeniable, and of course, Chicago's in the news now with President Trump trying to get the National Guard there. I think there's another side to the story of Chicago, though. We were there covering, of course, the shoe giveaway. There was also a celebration for Pope Leo, who's from Chicago. And then outside, under the shadows of where the Chicago Bulls play at the United Center, there is a tent called the Jesus Tent, where people meet regularly 3 times a week to pray for a move of God in the city. And I want you to hear what they had to say in their own words about what they sense.
We draw people here that will never enter a church building. And we love on them, we feed them, we hug them, and we allow God to do the rest.
I feel that the responsibility pray for everybody and release peace and release breakthrough and release the word of God. I believe by faith that we want to shift the atmosphere.
God, as we wave the banners, we release the Spirit of God through the city of Chicago.
Jenna, those interviews happened during the No Kings protest this past summer, and they prayed for God's providence, his peace to prevail, for no violence, and wherever they went to pray, we didn't see any of that. So really, we sense that God is moving in the Windy City.
Amen. John, great story.
Thank you so
job.
much. It was great to be there.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. From foster care to homelessness. Up next, how the Trump administration is working to help young people who've aged out of the system.
A large number of America's homeless are young people, and some are part of the 20,000 kids who age out of foster care each year.
And the Department of Housing and Urban Development is taking action to help these young people and transition them to living on their own. CBN senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright talked with HUD Secretary Scott Turner about the program.
What can you tell me about the foster care program that HUD is involved in and how you proactively help children who are in foster care?
Kelly, the First Lady and her team and our team here at HUD have partnered to provide $25 million to the foster youth Independence initiative, and we're very excited about this. About 20,000 youth aging out of foster care every year in our country, and about a quarter of those are at risk or already homeless. And so we want to make sure that with this investment from HUD and partner with the First Lady, that our youth that are aging out of the foster care system have a secure and a safe landing place, working with our local PHAs to provide a place for them to stay so that they can concentrate on their education, so they can concentrate on their careers and workforce.
What's your message to America about this foster care youth program that takes care of the youth who are aging out, and the significance of you and the First Lady doing this for America's youth?
So I would encourage people to get educated on foster youth, get educated on where they are, what their desires are, even if God calls you to maybe take one of these young men and young ladies and take them under your arm and mentor and disciple them. So I would say, lastly, that I would encourage the people of America to be intentional about pouring your life into the next generation as God calls you to do so.
Secretary Scott Turner, Housing and Urban Development, thank you for what you're doing.
Well, finally tonight, a father's special gift to his daughter is helping him fulfill his own dream.
Yeah, it's a simple gift that turned into a daily tradition. New Yorker Ryan Wasliger has been decorating his 7-year-old daughter's lunch bag since she was in preschool. Ryan, he studied graphic design in college, but ended up spending over a decade selling insurance. During the pandemic lockdown, though, in 2020, Ryan realized he needed a career change and picked up his artistic tools again, doodling cartoon characters on his daughter's paper lunch bag and sharing the designs on his social media accounts called the Snack Bag Dad.
To alleviate some of the pressures and some of the stress, I just started to draw on her snack bag. It made her happier. It made me happier.
And Ryan officially resigned from his insurance job and is now teaching art classes while pursuing a master's degree in art education.
He's really good.
He's incredible. Can you imagine getting that at school? Yeah.
Great brown bag lunch.
Have a great night. I leave the